Hello guys, so welcome back to Learn with Washington YouTube channel, and today we are going to learn how we can split available dataset into training and test using sklearn model. So the dataset I'm going to use is the one you are seeing on my GitHub account. So I'm going to retrieve the dataset. So it is a dataset consisting of cars and their prices, the mileage, age in terms of years. So I'm going to retrieve the data from GitHub to my notebook file using the URL retrieve. So from URL library.request, I am going to import URL retrieve. Like that, and then I'm going to use the URL retrieve method. So first of all, let's have the URL of the file. So let's have a variable car, and then I pass in the URL of the data. So after that, I'm going to use the URL retrieve method. So it takes two parameters. So first one is I'm going to pass the variable name car, and then I'm going to pass the name of the data, car prices. Like that. So when I run the cell, I should be able to retrieve the data to my GitHub. Like that. So that means now I already have the data. So what we are going to do now is to read the data using pandas. So I'm going to import pandas as PD. So pd.read CSV file, and then I pass in the file name. So let's have it as a data frame variable name. So when I call the data frame, I should be able to load the data, should be able to read the data. So as you can see from the output, we have loaded the data to our GitHub, to our notebook. So this is the data that we are going to split it, and then we are going to train it, and we are going to test, and then after that we are going to look at the accuracy of the data. So let's import necessary library. So we are going to use matplot library to do the visualization and to plot the graph. So that one is for plotting library in Python. So we are going to plot the scatter plot of the data that we have. So first we are going to use the plt.scatter, and then we are going to plot the mileage of the cars versus or against the selling price. So when we run the cell, we are going to get a scatter plot of the mileage against the sell price of the car or of the vehicles, and I'm sure you can see. So out of the scatter plot, we can have a line that covers all the plots. So that is the scatter plot of the data that we have so far. So I wanted us to visualize this using the graph. so that we know the relationship between the mileage and the car prices. So let's now plot another graph of car age versus sale price, so that so I'll just copy the same code because the code is the same. So I'll just change mileage to be age of the car. So when I run this cell again, I should be able to get the scatter plot of the car age versus the sale prices. I'm sure you are able to see the visualization or the graph. So that is the relationship. So there is a reason why we are plotting these scatter plots. So what we are going to have next is we are going to have a data frame for mileage. So we are going to have a variable representing the mileage. So let's have it as x. So it is mileage versus the age. So let's have x to be. So we are only plotting the mileage of the cars versus the age. So let's correct. We are getting an error there. So let's correct the error. So that is our variable 1. So we are going to have another variable y. So these are now the variables that we are going to use to train the model. And now y, we are going to just have the sale prices of the cars. So we have mileage versus age, and then we have the sale price. So we are retrieving this data from the dataset that we have. df there means the data frame, that is the variable we defined earlier. So we are going to use these variables to train the model. So I have the code here. So from sk learn model, we imported train_test split method. So we are going to have 4 parameters, that is x train, x test, y train, and y test. And then we are using the train test split method, and then we pass the variable xy. So the test size there is the ratio. So that one means we are using the percentage that we are using. So we will be using 30% to test and 70% to train. So we are using part of the data to test, the 80%. We are using the 80% to train and 30% to test, so that we manage to achieve a good accuracy. That's why we are using the test size ratio. So the x should be lowercase. So let me correct the error there. So we are having problems with the, so let me correct. So x train is not defined. So let's see here. So now it works. So we have the mileage and the age in terms of years. So the reason why we were getting the error is because we didn't execute our first cell. So we have to run the first cell, that is the model. We have to run the model. Is when we be able to call the parameters. So after having the X train where we have the mileage and the age, let's now have the X test. So X test give us also the mileage and age in terms of years. So the one we have X train, that is the percentage we are using to train the model. So we are having 70% training and 30%. So the X train there, those are the data that we are using to train, and the X test there, these are the values that we are using to test the model. So when we run Y train and Y test now, I'm sure you are able to follow along what we are doing. So the X train, these are the values that we are using to train the 70%, and the X test is the 30% that we are using now to test the model. So let's run now the Y test. So we already have the Y train also. So when we run the Y test now, we'll be able to get the sell price, the values that we are using to test. So let's now train the model. So from sklearn, we import linear regression, and then we use the classifier, which is a variable referring to the linear regression method. So that is now, we have now trained the model. So after training the model, what we are going to do next is now to run the X test, and then we'll be able to make predictions out of that. So we were using 6 values to test the model. So out of that, let's make predictions. So classifier.predict X test, you can see now we have the values. So we have predicted the values of the X test. So we are going to do the same using the X train, and then we'll be able to check score out of that. So Y test, I mean. So when you look at the values, it's like they are of the same range, but not really. So this one now we have the sell price. So if we want to check the score now, we'll check the X test against the Y test, and if we run the cell, that will be able to give us the score of our model. So you can see our score is 80%, 0.80065. So that means 80%. So if we run all the 4 parameters now, just to check, you can see now we have so this gives us just the data that we use to test the model and train the model. So we have tested the score of our model, by running the X test and Y test. We have made predictions. We've trained the model using sklearn. So it's just as easy as that. It's really simple now to make predictions out of the data that you have. So that's all for today. So in our next course now we'll be making predictions using large data sets. So make sure you get notified.